Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is Joe Buskins. I'm a second generation professional boat builder, 100-ton licensed captain. And this is episode 10 of our transom replacement. So we are going to do a brief recap. Last episode, when you guys were tuned in, we did material removal here in our transom. Took all the old wood out, which is going to be important. And more than likely, you're dealing with a transom replacement because the wood rotted out. In this episode, we are going to be replacing it with something much better, something I've been using for years and can confidently say that it's going to hold your motor, last for years, and be a quality product. Now, again, as a recap, last episode used our little DeWalt angle grinder. We used a variety of chisels and hammers and everything. And you can see here this surface has come down to more or less bare fiberglass. Now there may be a little more detailing and fine tuning, but I wanted to get another episode out and kind of detail the next step for you folks. And that is setting up some patterns or templates for cutting out your new piece of material. Now you can see that this is obviously just a piece of construction paper, and we've already laid this out. Now this stuff comes in a roll, and you can go to almost all your local big box stores. Like I got this at our local Lowe's back in the painting department, and it works great for making templates and patterns. And I've got another method here. Some of you folks may or may not have seen this, and I've actually already started making a pattern for the new replacement piece. But I wanted to show you folks first how we got to this piece. Now, it may seem pretty self-explanatory and pretty easy, but if you've never done this kind of stuff, it can be a little bit intimidating to know how to cut out the right shapes and sizes. And I found a few things that have really helped me do a better job. One of them, and again, you can pick these up at your local big box stores. They call that a pony clamp or a little spring clamp. And what I'm going to do is basically, we know our core material is going to come up here at about flush with the transom, and we're going to grab it just like so. I'm going to pull it taut on this other side, get it more or less the same. And these little jokers here are about like having another helper in the shop. So spend a little money on some spring clamps. And again, I'll try to put a link below all of our videos so that you folks at home can find all this stuff. And if you purchase through our Amazon links, that does help support the channel, so it's much appreciated. Another item you're going to need every day in the boat shop is a little Sharpie, just a black, marks a lot. And you can very simply here, we've got this thing clamped into place. And normally I like to kind of just use my hands and go in there, and you can develop a bit of a crease or a line and go around, push that into place. And then you should be able to get your marker right into that corner and get a fairly accurate mark. I got an extension cord in the way there. You don't want to mark your extension cord. Again, this may seem pretty obvious to you guys and or gals out there that are professionals, but I'm assuming a lot of folks out there are DIYers and maybe doing a transom replacement for the first time. And this series of videos is for you. So we've marked here on the inside. Now we can come out on the outside and very simply just get a loose mark. Now it does not have to be absolutely perfect in every way. You're looking for just kind of a general outline and something to get you pretty darn close when we transition to, we've got our big sheet of Coosa board laying over there. That's made right here in our home state of Alabama. Used Coosa when we were building our big 29 footer, all the stringers, transom floor, and it's been doing a fantastic job. So obviously, I'm not gonna waste y'all's time. We're gonna try to expedite this video along, but you can see we basically got an inside mark, an outside mark, and it would be a simple matter of just taking some good, I like these, I actually got these I think I got these at Lowe's as well. Those are Fiskar brand. Again, I'll put a link. Those have been excellent. And we just followed that line, made an exact template and pattern. I think my cameraman can zip over here and maybe show. We've got plenty good enough that we could take this and go right over to our Coosa and overlay that material so that we're not wasting any of this material. And that is one thing about the Coosa board. It is fantastic and going to last you a lifetime. It is going to be a little more expensive than a marine plywood, but everything we're doing today could be translated to marine plywood. So don't feel like you have to use the Coosa. We're just trying to bring this boat back to life and give it a whole new lease on life and make it better than it was before. So we're going with the Coosa because we can access it and I have plenty of experience with it. So that is one method you can use right there. Now another method that is possible, and this is kind of cool, something kind of different, and these are just basically a series of stirring sticks. You can get these again at your local paint store. I get them by the handfuls. Now, if you had a smaller pattern you were making, you can use a tongue depressor there. You can get those by the box as well. That's another handy thing. They make fantastic little stirring sticks, and that's just your regular old tongue depressor. And what I've done is just basically we've used another item that's readily available. That's a little arrow, just a hot glue gun, and it's been warming up for us. Now obviously we've already started the process here, but if you wanted to continue along, and you can see that, say we're going to flush this up right with the top. And again, this initial pattern doesn't have to be crazy technical or perfect in every single way, but it's going to get you darn close. And then once we get close, I'm going to show you folks how to kind of fine tune it a little more. Maybe my cameraman can zip in. This is another item that you might just have laying around the house, and I want to say it was less than $20 for this little hot glue gun. There you go. All right, and you can see just like that. Now, if it were me, obviously you could continue on around. You would have to do some trimming and cutting to do this little short piece. Or if you just get this general large cutout, you can set the piece of Coosa in, and then you could come from the inside and just use your magic marker to mark the cutout there. Or you could continue right along, you know, with putting another piece there and then tying them together, then coming right across. And you end up, hopefully my glue has set there, but same deal. Kind of cool. Like to give you folks some options out there as far as ways to get a good result with maybe slightly different methods. Now, one thing I have learned, sometimes if you make a template or a pattern, and say for example you trim it and it's not exactly perfect, sometimes say for example if I need a little more on this, I would do say +1/4. That would mean +1/4 of an inch. Or if your template is a little bit long, you could go -1/2 and then apply the difference. You could either trim a little bit off on the actual piece or add a little bit on the actual piece. That way you don't necessarily have to make a whole new template. You can just kind of mark on the template where, matter of fact, I would do like an arrow, like exactly where you need to do the plus or minus, and you can adjust a little bit from there. Now, of course, another way, and I don't see my tape measure at the moment, some people may be handy with the tape measure, there it is, and just want to do it by measurement. You could certainly just measure the overall width and then the overall depth, and you could plot that out. But honestly, for something like that, something like this, that's a lot harder than it needs to be. And my dad was a big advocate of the KISS principle. And I bet a lot of you folks out there know what the KISS principle is. And that's keep it simple, silly, or keep it simple, stupid. No, I know that sounds kind of harsh a little bit maybe, but don't make it any harder than it needs to be. If you can do something the easy way, by all means do it the easy way. Now, another tool that comes in super handy when you're making patterns and templates is something called a bevel square. And these, again, are available in all your shops and stores. Again, I'll try to put a link below in the videos, but it allows you to capture different angles. And if y'all will notice, this isn't a straight cut. Maybe we can get an overview from over on this side. There's a bit of an angle to this outer edge here. And you can see here how we can capture that angle exactly, and then we can translate that angle to whatever we're using to cut our core. And in this case, I found that a DeWalt, we call that a saber saw or a jigsaw, little reciprocating. And you can look, we have already adjusted the angle. Hope that shows up on the camera there. I know we've got some bright sunlight. But you can see we have duplicated the angle of the table on this. So when we make the cut, we're gonna make the outside of it beveled outward a little bit. And if you don't do that, you're gonna end up with kind of a big gap on the sides there. So hopefully that was helpful. And at this point in the video, I want to tell everybody how much I appreciate you guys watching. And if you're finding our content helpful and enjoyable and useful, when you give us that thumbs up, it's totally free to do it. Like, share, comment, subscribe. That promotes the video out there to the whole YouTube community, helps us grow the channel. The more the channel grows, the more of these kind of videos we can do for everybody. All right, folks, here we go with our little Sharpie, and we've already started marking around the perimeter. I got off the mark a little bit. That's okay. You can always come back. Part of being human. That's the cool thing about fiberglass too. There's almost always room for a little bit of sanding or a little bit of putty. You folks will notice too that we put some bricks on our template or pattern. That is another little handy item to have around the shop. You'd be surprised at how often we use bricks for holding things in place. Readily available, common item, super cheap, just handy. Yep, and just really nice and easy. Now, y'all will notice that I scooted this over just a bit. We are going to be cutting this at an outward angle, so that's why I didn't put it right up against the edge, but only the sides are on an outward angle. And then we're going to want our orientation to be the same on this panel as well. Sometimes boats aren't completely symmetrical. You folks at home know that obviously some good PPE is very important. Wearing some masks, wearing some gloves, working with Coosa board. It's got fiberglass, it's got fibers in the edges there, so you don't ever want to drag. Matter of fact, you can see them, that kind of white line right there, and then right at the edge, and then there's polyurethane in between. You don't ever want to drag your hands back and forth with a bare hand, or I like to work with a Tyvek suit when we're cutting this kind of material, if possible. And then another little trick, just running the shop vac, be able to catch some of this stuff. Has a cool adjustment. You can release that. I like it. Looks like too. Very nice. Very nice. I'm excited to see this get done. Now again, perfection is not required, so don't stress about this too much. All we're really looking for here is kind of just what we call a rough cut or a rough fit. And you can see over here on this side, you can see on the back side that it's sticking up a little bit proud, but you can also see here where we matched these angles. Now, a lot of times what I will do is just set it up in place, get your magic marker, and just look for areas that are a little bit snug. Now, I want to be sure it's more or less centered on the transom and more or less level across the transom. We got about the same amount sticking up on either side. And I can see, like right in here, for example, folks, can y'all see right there? We're making some contact. So we need to trim a little bit of material off of there. Probably the same deal over here. It's a little snug. Sometimes I will do something as simple as, matter of fact, it's a little tight right up here at the top. We're just taking a little material. Sometimes I'll even just make a little arrow like that. And that would indicate to me, when we go back over to the sanding board, that we need to shave a little bit of material. And we will probably even soften or radius this inside corner just a smidge. All right, folks. Now we're gonna jump over, again, to show a variety of tools. We're gonna jump back over to the Fest tool. This thing is amazing for catching all the dust that you're gonna make. It comes on automatically, super nice. I'm gonna switch to more of a orbital. A little more control there. Now, you could also use the little D-walk grinder for something like this. Now, I was just talking to a young man that was doing a major refit on a Scout out there, and we were talking about a little angle grinder such as this with like a 36 or 24, and then this little backing pad. That's a 4.5 inch, and it's made by Gator Grit. I hope you folks can see that. But this thing will rapidly remove, but it does not catch the dust. So we got some fans going, and I want to show you how aggressively this will work. That is a boat builder's friend right there. I have probably gone through about 25 of those things in my career. Fiberglass dust is hard on power tools, generally speaking, but we try to keep airflow going and try to blow those tools out and don't let them get too hot on extended grinding sessions. But here we go. Let's see how we're looking. Now at this point, you can see we've come down a bit. We're flushing up, and remember, it is okay if we're a little bit proud. That's looking, we want to be sure it is sunk up in there. And again, it is okay if we're up proud a little bit. You folks can see how quickly that little grinder can remove material if we need to. And as long as we get it fitting around the edge and on the bottom, we can always trim the top a little bit. Now a lot of this kind of work, having a helper is really nice too. Kind of hold things in place. Matter of fact, if you don't have a helper, you know, clamps are one of those things, whether you're using the little pony, you know, pony clamps to help hold things in place, or in a previous episode, we showed how we made these homemade transom clamps, which are basically designed to go over the transom, and then we can run these bolts through, and you can put clamping pressure on these. And that is what we're most likely going to end up using when we get ready to actually bond this core in for permanent. But again, we're making some good progress here. I really don't know that we would need to do a whole lot more fitting to get this piece. I might put a little bit of bevel on the bottom. We have a little bit of room there where we could do that if we wanted to. It's a little tight right in there. Can y'all see that, folks? Maybe a little tight there. Maybe still a little bit tight. I think I might could walk it over just a smidge. It's important to remember to not go crazy though. A little bit at a time. Look at either side. And again, a little bit of putty and a little bit of filler. A little tight right there. A little tight right there maybe. All right, just a little more sanding, and I think this one is gonna be good to go. All right. Now remember, folks, one of our previous episode to this one where we did all the grind out and material removal, I talked about a problem some people get when they're dealing with projects like this, and my dad called it analysis paralysis. Is one of those things you just analyze something to death and you don't make any movement forward on your project, and you don't want to suffer from that. That's the great thing about working with composites and fiberglass, is you can almost always add a little bit of putty, or you can do a little bit of sanding, and you can almost always get a result that you're going to be pretty happy with. The worst thing you can do is nothing. That's like, you don't want to do nothing. You want to move forward, do your research. That's where the channel, obviously we got a ton of videos on here to try to help you folks at home. I've done this a bunch, but if you've never done it before, I know it can be super intimidating. Again, these little clamps, see, we're kind of bumping this thing in here nice and tight. These little clamps will help us hold our general position. There's a little gap at the bottom, but that's actually quite all right. It's not really bothering me at all, as long as you don't have any big, massive, obvious gaps. Now, this transom was originally 2 layers of 1/2-inch plywood, but it is important to remember, like with the Coosa, you want to go with a 26-pound density. That is their recommended for transoms. And even on bigger, more powerful boats, they have a 32-pound density transom core. Their 15 and their 20-pound densities are going to be more recommended for like stringer applications or floors or bow decks and rear decks. Although when we were building our 29, I used the 26-pound density, or the Blue Water 26, exclusively for the whole thing. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'm gonna let this, if y'all notice, this sticks up a little bit over the transom in a few places, but that is quite all right, because when we get ready to put this boat back together, we are actually gonna be sanding down over the transom, and instead of going back with this little plastic trim piece that is so common on a lot of transoms, we are actually gonna wrap this transom. We're gonna bring fiberglass from the inside over to the outside and completely encapsulate the Coosa and the new fiberglass, and we're gonna have a bulletproof transom. Okay folks, so check this out. We've taken our first initial piece and we're using it now as a pattern. It's gonna be more accurate. You can see I've already come back with our black Sharpie, and I marked it face side down. You can see we got the angle outwards, and then I've also made sure to mark this. This is going to be the inside of the boat. The orientation is up, and this is piece number 1 because this is going to be a double thick laminate, 2 layers of 3/4. There's going to be more of the same. You folks have already seen me cut this out, but it is important to remember that you're going to want to continue your cut on the same angle. Like if you have an angle here, you're going to want to mimic that same angle. And remember, again, that is called a bevel square, and that is going to be your friend for duplicating or capturing angles on intricate parts. I know I've said it once and I'll say it again, a good quality shop vac is well worth the money spent for sure. Fiberglass work is dusty, but a shop vac will help a lot. Now, as I said earlier, this was originally 2 pieces of 1/2-inch plywood, and I couldn't get any 26-pound Coosa in 1/2 inch, so we're going double heavy, which if you go back and look at the videos when we built our big 29-foot offshore boat with the twin 150s, we used 2 layers of 3/4 Coosa, just like this. So I am absolutely positive that this is going to be plenty strong. Can't emphasize that enough. All right, that's looking pretty sharp already. And what we're going to do is if it's a little bit proud, which it's going to be, it's going to stick up a little bit over the edges. We're just going to bevel it back in. All right, I got to loosen this clamp here and make a little shift or a little adjustment. Sometimes you just gotta walk it in there. You can see we're tight again right there on those corners. Before I even clamp it, I can see that's going to be a problem. Again, your little Sharpies. Yeah, we'll take a little bit of material right off that corner there. Give this a little bit of room. Same for over here, kind of help walk that in a little bit. And again, remember, putty and fillers, you don't want to get sloppy. We want to always do quality work, but there's a little wiggle room there. This isn't like cabinetry work, so it doesn't have to be just exactly perfect in every way, because that'll just make you go crazy. Your job's going to take a whole lot longer. So there's a realm there. We want quality work, but don't obsess about it if it's not perfect. Okay, so here we go, a little bit of sanding and grinding right off that corner. And I really do love, again, that's that Festool, the RO 150. It's got the forced rotation, and it's got the orbital and the vacuum assist. We're just going to take a little bit at a time, but I just realized that a lot of you folks out there may not have ever seen Coosa worked with or used at all, and a lot of folks are leery of it. But if you'll notice, the flex or deflection, I'm about 187, 189 pounds, and you got a little movement there, but it is very solid. But you'll notice we're picking up these fairly large pieces single-handedly. It's going to be a good bit lighter than marine plywood, but on a similar level of stiffness. And some people heard some arguments like online talking about structural core materials, or core materials are not structural in a lot of applications. You're relying on the outer skin of fiberglass or the inner skin of fiberglass. But this Coosa board has a lot of strength within itself. So it is a structural material here. And Coosa, a lot of people think that it's got to be fiberglass to have any strength, and that is just not true. You can actually put this down as a replacement, like on a pontoon boat, for example. You could pull the old plywood out, bolt the Coosa down, and you don't have to fiberglass it. Same goes if you've got an RV at home. Now, this is where I've had a lot of people that are finding the channel that didn't even think about RV application. So bad floor panels and slide outs and that kind of stuff. If you want something that's lightweight, very strong, can be screwed, bolted, works a lot like plywood, but is never gonna rot, Coosa is gonna be the answer for you. Now, I do think that overseas, I don't know that Coosa is readily available overseas, but I believe there's a similar product that may be out there. Maybe somebody can comment down below and help us out there and make a recommendation. But here stateside and probably within Canada, Coosa is gonna be our product of choice. All right, so that's getting quite close. And again, there's a little bit of a gap there, but we're gonna bevel that down and really walk that in there a little bit tighter, a little bit closer. But I think you folks kind of get the idea as far as fitting this. Now, we're trying not to make these episodes too terribly crazy long, but I do want to show one more thing. We're gonna be, probably the next episode is gonna be actually fiberglass and everything in. But as far as prep is concerned, when you are trying to bond in Coosa or plywood, for example, you're gonna wanna drill some vent holes for this material, because we're gonna be using either some layers of matte that's heavily saturated, or we're gonna make a thickened putty, and it can work either way. But generally, when we're building a boat, we would be drilling a series of holes to allow resin to move up and out through the panel. And I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about there. It's probably every 3, 4, 5 inches. And generally, now that's probably a little bigger. I believe that's about a 5/16 or so. I would normally go with like a 1/4, but what I like to do is start it flush and then turn at a bit of an angle and go through there. Same deal, start in, turn at an angle, go right through. And we would perforate this whole panel here so that when you put your thickened putty or material or your fiberglass resin and you've resin coated the Coosa and you're ready to bond it, you can tell if you've got a good bond, because what's gonna happen is as you clamp this down, if it's made full contact, you'll actually see resin or putty squeeze out or start to squeeze out through some of these holes. And if for some reason you're not getting good squeeze out, what you can actually do is take some resin and actually get it to go back in the hole and fill any void that may be back there behind the panel. And generally what I would do, and of course we're gonna show this as we move forward in the next episode, the glass option, the putty option, and do we do both pieces of core material, or do we do one piece of core, or do we do both pieces of core at the same time? So again, there's pros and cons. There's a lot of ways this can be done and turn out really, really great. So folks, I want everyone out there to know how much I genuinely appreciate everybody tuning in to watch the channel. The channel does need your support and help to grow. If the channel doesn't grow, it's hard for us to continue doing these kind of videos. So please remember, give us that thumbs up. It's very important to the YouTube algorithm. Like, comment, share on other platforms. If you've got other boating groups or other ways to get the word out about the channel, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Captain Joe here, Fish Bump TV on YouTube. My son Logan as my amazing cameraman, working hard behind the scenes. And we will catch you folks in the next episode.